over to the next React video. I've been putting this one off for a bit. It's called The History of Drugs and Capitalism from old Second Thought. Let's see another element of our society being corrupted by capitalist scum. And by the way, chat, people being like, I saw someone say, they talk about Soc Dems. Soc Dem is union. That's the trade union movement. Socialists and Soc Dems made it. All right? That would be a goddamn dream if we ever were in such a world. Okay? We barely have liberals. Joe Biden, if we were in a sane society, would be a Republican. Hillary Clinton would be a Republican. Nancy Pelosi would be a conservative Democrat. Maybe a Republican. That would be the sane fucking world. But we have fascists versus conservatives. And of course the fascists beat that.
This episode is made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon.
Both of my uncles work for the trucking company Estes and are huge hog Trump lovers that say I have lib values, but thankfully they don't even vote. And by the way, that makes perfect sense because why? Because politics is just a reflection of your values. People see the Republicans as the daddy party and the Democrats as the mommy party. It's not based on any kind of fucking it's not based on any kind of like ideological or material outcomes. You posture. I'm tough. I'm voting Republican. I think it was Matt Christman. He had a really good explanation of the political parties. Let me see if I can find it.
This channel, join our Discord server, and get early access to every video, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought. I've heard from some of you that my videos don't have great replayability value, so I've decided that in an effort to get you to come back and rewatch this video, I'm gonna read a random sequence of numbers you're definitely going to forget and will therefore need to come back to at a later date. Pretty clever, huh? They don't call me Mr. YouTube for nothing. I'm the only one actually innovating on this dying platform. Anyway, here we go with the unforgettable, forgettable content. 54, 609, 324, 8, 420, and another 420, and another.
Hell yeah.
Wait a minute. How's it going? In this episode, we're talking about drug legalization.
Democrats are the don't be an asshole party, and Republicans are the don't be the pussy party. Thank you! That's exactly what I was thinking of. Oh my god. Can you find me the clip of that clincher? Or anyone? Where Matt Christmas... oh, here it is. I found the tweet. Oh, I found it. I found a tweet. It has 1 like. Here it is. I love Jacobin. Our fault lines, as Dylan Riley explains in the New Left Review, also lie elsewhere between the dueling political logics of neoliberal multiculturalism on the one hand and macho national neo-mercantilism on the other. Or as Chapo Trap House, as Matt Christman has put it, the party of don't be an asshole versus the party of don't be a pussy. That's exactly what our politics is. So of course your truck driving uncles identify with the don't be a pussy party. That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. And I'll be honest with you, Chad, I'm ambivalent between the two of these parties. This is a grill stream. If somebody could find the section where he talks about it, it's pretty good.
And decriminalization. It's a massive topic, one that could easily snowball into a
When you have to flee this country, you will be welcome here. Where is that? Where is that?
long video essay, like, I don't know, over 15 minutes long or something. Ah, dang it. This can't keep happening. Anyway, we're talking about drugs and drug legalization. Here in the business, we call these kinds of videos gimmies. They're easy to make, convincing, and they usually all go like this. 1. We should decriminalize drugs. 2. Look at how bad the war on drugs is. It's expensive, it's ineffective, racist, violent, etc. 3. Look at Portugal or some other country where decriminalization and legalization works really well.
True, 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 true.
And 4, there is no fourth step. It really is that easy. Legalizing and decriminalizing drugs is a gimme. Drugs can have very serious side effects. Every drug does to some extent, including the already legal ones. But numerous studies, real-world policy choices, and just being a little compassionate and understanding that being addicted to something shouldn't be treated like going on a murderous rampage and punished with decades of imprisonment, all demonstrate that the legalization of comparatively safe drugs like marijuana, the decriminalization of every other drug, yes, literally every other drug, and harm reduction policies like needle disposal stations, supervised injection sites, and voluntary treatment are good things when it comes to reducing the impact drugs have on our societies and our fellow humans. We can, with relatively high confidence, conclude that this public health and harm reduction approach leads to fewer people having a harmful relationship with drug usage, a drop in mortality rates due to drug use, lower rates of HIV and AIDS transmission, less incarceration, which we could definitely use in this country, undermining criminal networks with an involvement in the drug trade, destigmatizing drug users, and for a lot of addicts or simple recreational users, consumption is just less stressful, more enjoyable, and safer, which also has to count for something. A lot of good comes from treating drug usage as a public health issue and not a criminal issue, including the goals advocates of the war on drugs say they themselves have.
They don't have that. They don't have that. The advocates for the war on drugs support the institutions of the status quo. They support having billions of dollars go to the DEA. They support the contractors who make big money providing services for the prison system. I think this is a cut from the Christman stream. Did you listen to it?
You're literally just creating two political parties where the message is, from one, don't be a pussy, and the other is, don't be an asshole. And you gotta pick one. People don't think that they can change anything with politics. Anything structural. If it's structural, it is by definition not political. That is what we believe, because that's what we believe. And why do we believe it? Because it's what we live. It is just our lived experience, ironically enough. Our collective lived experience is capitalist realism. It is that because we stopped having a class adversarial relationship at the top level of government in the 70s, and that the democratic project has basically been dead since then. And that as a result of that, the two parties don't argue about things like how long.
And that's why, Chad, in the very beginning of the video of the John Oliver thing, it was Jimmy Carter who signed the bill that fucked truckers. That was the Democratic Party. Neoliberalism didn't start with Reagan. It started with Carter. The Democratic Party is as much of an author of neoliberalism as Margaret Thatcher. Tony Blair, Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter, they destroyed the left in the English-speaking world. It was just as much a Democratic Party function as a Republican Party function. And Joe Biden is Jimmy Carter too. Everybody knows it. No change, because there is no class consciousness anymore. There is no struggle. It's don't be a pussy, man. Don't be a pussy, man. Don't be an asshole, man.
Should people work? What should be the conditions of their work? What should be remuneration? What should be the standard of living for an American? Those questions are not political to people, even if we talk about them sometimes high-mindedly. And what that means is that at this point, I feel like if you get in front of a bunch of people, casuals, who are going to just come into the polls because it's so easy now, they're going to hear you say, I want to get Medicare for all, and I want to make everybody have free college, just like Corbyn did, because Corbyn got to run a general election where he got to make his message spread in a country where they have a fucking parliamentary system where if he got in power, he could actually have done some stuff because they don't have our stupid fucking constitution and it's a majority rule. And yet, in the red
wall.
redoubt there, the red wall. They went for Brexit because Brexit was more real to them than the stuff Corbyn was promising, because they didn't think he was telling them the truth. And even though some people are going to be disarmed by the genuineness of a guy like Corbyn and Bernie, and that's going to get you some people, it's not going to get you enough people. And a lot of people are going to see it, and they're going to be like, yeah. And then they're going to go back to the big questions, which are cultural and identity-based.
And I agree with Matt 100%. Although I love how his production value makes mine look like a fucking amazing. But let me say this about Matt. I actually think the left has one advantage in this struggle, is that we actually do in America have the majority on these dumb cultural issues, on these pissant cultural issues, like legalizing marijuana or whatever. We do have a majority. So what we have to do is take control of the Democratic Party through these culture war fights, while we have a cadre, a core of activists and people who believe in the structural change. We call those people progressives. And we get in control of a Democratic Party presidential nomination. And then we actually deliver. I think Jeremy Corbyn could have won, but Brexit was a checkmate for his coalition. I think that Jeremy Corbyn might have won in 2015, but he's not going to win in 2020 or 2019 because the Brexit situation was too much of an internal conflict for his coalition. So I'm not as much of a doomer as Matt, where I think that we can never do it. I just know that we're not going to win just by making those promises. We win the cultural fight, and then we actually deliver change. And that's what FDR did. FDR came in, and then he actually did the shit, and he got even more popular. And that's how you break people out. You break people out by actually delivering shit, and then claiming credit for it. And then people will believe. They have to believe because it happened. So that's my own personal belief. Otherwise, it's nihilism of like, we're fucked forever. And maybe that's true.
And I think one of the big reasons that there's a disconnect here, and that like the political class, and by that I mean literally people who pay attention to politics at all, and give investment into their vote, they believe that when they think of a political party, they think of it as a historical entity. And they think of it as having a history of things that it's done. And as having a coherent platform that involves things like distribution of resources. But the thing is, that's only if you learn that shit and keep it in your head when you think about the Democratic Party. For these casual voters who will come in, if there's a breeze, they will be blown into the voting booth. They only see the party in front of them. And the Democratic Party is the party that just says, don't be an asshole, in a wheedling voice. Say, come on, guys. Do we have to be so mean? Because, as Trump says, Trump's big rejoinder to the kids in cages is, who's built the cages? And the thing is, we're going to have cages. And the question becomes, culturally, are we going to be an asshole about having the cages, or are we going to be a fucking pussy about having the cages? And that's the difference. Liberals say, we got to have cages, but don't be an asshole about cages. Liberals, Republicans say, look, we got to have cages. Don't be a fucking pussy about cages. That's it. Those are the two parties, as people understand them, as cultural.
And by the way, chat, this video was made back right when Biden was elected, and Matt was fucking correct about everything. They did the cages. They did it all. Matt was right. The libs did nothing. We were stupid for believing that he could even do it one thing. They did nothing. It's just don't be an asshole, man. That's it. Trump's worse. That's it. That's all. Matt was so fucking right. There's no debate about how right he was.
Signals, like those things in older generations, the people that make up the leadership of these political parties and are largely like disproportionately heard in its culture, such that it is this political culture, it's self-conscious political culture. They all remember a time, lived in their lives when there was some sort of ideological coherence and meaning to the Democratic Party that involved material relationship. But people living now, certainly ones who just decided to vote in 2020, do not have that. They see the don't be an asshole party, the don't be a pussy party, and whether you want to be an asshole or a pussy in America comes down to, did you go to
college?
Someone say it. Someone say it. College. Thank you. That's
Obviously.
it. Boop. Educational attainment. Did you go to the etiquette school? A thing that used to get you entry into a real middle class, right? Because you get a professional degree and it would give you an access to a professional lifestyle. Those are gone, but the attendant social prestige is still there. And so people still go to college and consider themselves part of this thing, even though it doesn't get them anything but the same gig economy job everybody else has.
Well, it gives you debt now, so you're even further behind starting your life. You go to college, unless you have connections, unless you know someone, going to college gives you a big pile of debt. So you start in the negatives about doing things like buying a home or living, you know, starting a family. That's what college does for you. It puts you back. Good luck. That's why COVID has been such a fucking good thing for this generation. Why millennials are finally starting to be able to buy some houses is they didn't have to pay their student loans for 2 years. They were able to save some money for a fucking change. Now the problem is we're not building enough. So the fucking housing prices are skyrocketing because we don't have any public housing doing the bottom of the market. We are not building enough housing. We're building less housing now than we did 20 years ago. This country is so fundamentally broken in the most pathetic ways. I don't even know what to tell you. And we don't make anything anymore. We make nothing. Americans are so obsessed with you having a job. A job to do what? Social media manager? Marketing guy? Salesman? Retail worker? What are you doing? You're not making shit. There's not steel. There's not cars. There's jack shit. Fuck all. Pushing around a paper or a broom. That's what Americans do. Or maybe a scalpel. You got to provide care work for the elderly. But as far as building things, that's barely done. We are a rotten, decaying country. Pathetic.
But it changes the way they vote.
Me and my partner saved $24K for a house, and that's still not enough for a down payment. You're getting there. It depends on how much the house is you're trying to buy, but you should be, for first-time home buyers can get subsidies from the government, and you owe less for your down payment. You need to look into that more. But yeah, you're definitely, 24K, yeah? Now you got to keep do another 24K. Maybe you'll get it. Almost the entire American economy is built around extracting from the population, not producing or providing anything for them. It's about putting you on... This is what our economy is now. Get as many people as you can on my subscription service or debt payment. That's what it is. Every single fucking thing is usury. You own jack shit. As soon as you stop making your payment to Netflix, you don't own any of those movies. I mean, back in the 90s when I was growing up, you would have a wall of VHS tapes that you bought. Right? You want to be entertained? Hey, how about let's watch this movie, and you pop it in. Now, you have your Netflix subscription, or you own fucking nothing. In ancient societies, the only people that built anything were slaves, just saying. I mean, that's not true at all, but I get your point. I get your point. I got paid $49K for going to uni. I didn't even graduate. You really need to get your shit together, Americans. Yeah. Yeah. Don't even tell people. 49k euros. Don't tell Americans shit like that. They don't think you're telling the truth. They live in a fucking hell world. And by the way, that stuff, we're coming for you. Neoliberals are winning. We're putting neoliberal propaganda in every single English-speaking country so hard, you're going to lose everything. Or VHS tapes you recorded yourself from the TV. Yeah, exactly. We're floating between renterism and exterminism. That's exactly right. Everybody read Four Futures. We're on the path for the two bad futures. Profit rate on industry has declined, only commodifying more aspects of human life and making lucre off rent is all that's left. Not only that, obviously Marx was right when he said the tendency of the rate of profit is to decline in capitalism, which was one of the most important contradictions of capitalism. And we talked about that on Friday. There was a nice video from Hakeem that was put out. You should go watch that if you haven't seen it. But there's two different sources of profit, and what are they doing? They're rolling back whatever corpse of social democracy existed. Trade unionism annihilated. You're going to work more and you're going to get less, even while you produce more. We need a citation on profits going down. Lots of the data I'm reading is the opposite what you're talking about. Is because of the short-term price increases where these companies have price gouged. It's a long-term rate. You're going to have spikes. Typically when there's some sort of destructive event. What's your opinion on reform versus revolution? I'm a centrist Marxist. I use whatever tools are at hand. 34-year-old elder millennial here. Been on a BOH restaurant worker my entire adult life. Made less than 45k a year every year. Tried to open up my own butcher shop, but it seems impossible as a career chef from the monetary side. Everyone's like centrist Marxist Pepe Lot. You don't. It means centrist between reform and revolution. Never mind. Fuck. I shouldn't have said that. Massive profits versus rate of profit. Thank you, Antifada. Let's keep going.
But not on a material basis, because that's not part of our politics. And then you have the people who, and in college you learn, you know, hey, we're moving papers around in here. We're muffling all the horrible shit that our system creates, all the blood that we create. When we create a bunch of bullshit language that we talk to each other nicely, good phrases, and we raise our...
You'll confuse Twitch nerds if you say centrist. Yeah, I shouldn't have said it that way. What I should have said is, I support both. The only companies I invest in have their profit margins going up year after year. That's true.
We learned this from the British when we talk about how many fucking slave barges we've just moved through the port of fucking Equatorial Guinea.
A single firm is not representative of the economy as a whole, right? You understand that, right? Also, we've injected a ton of cash into the market to create liquidity.
We have acculturated ourselves to the brutality of extraction, of being at the top of a pyramid of human misery. And so we've learned how to kind of let off the steam of the anxiety of living that every day, the horror of it, in the form of liberal politesse. Like, it used to be manners, it used to be religion, then it became manners after God died. And that manners used to be, you know, in the old reactionary era, pinky extended, stiff upper lip shit. Manners now need post-60s, mommy, we all love each other, hug box, snowflake stuff, if you want to call it. And so you go through that fire and you get the message, don't be a fucking asshole. Now, the thing is, a lot of guys are going to hear, even going through that system, just because you think, I'm actually going to make money out of this. Like the ones who go into college thinking, hey, I'm going to really get a career out of it. The suckers, in other words, they're going to come out reactionary. Because fuck this. You know what? I want to be an asshole. Because the don't be an asshole thing, it's so awfully condescending and sadistic. And
yes, yeah, the don't be an asshole stuff is condescending, but it's so much fun to be the asshole. People like to be bullies. They like to punch down.
It has no meaning related to anyone's actual lives. It says, keep your voice down. We're trying to study. And what if you don't fucking want to study? What if you don't fucking want to study, bitch? What am I studying for? You used to be able to say, I'm studying to get a job, but now that's not it. I'm studying so I can sit around with another bunch of people and pretend that I'm part of a fucking cognitive elite? Are you fucking kidding me? But one of the things about that was once you're out of that, there's the sucking sunk cost. And it's like, shit, I'm not going back. I'm not going to be like my dad. No, I'm a good leftist. I'm a lib. And it's going to affect you regardless of what your gender demo is or race or whatever. But if you didn't have that experience, if those manners and the anxiety, the social anxiety related to being aware of things like privilege didn't like seep into you and like become constitutive of your ability to enjoy yourself, which you can only get in those experiences of collegiate brainwashing, then what do you know? You don't fucking give a shit. And that means when someone tells you to keep your voice down and tells you to don't be an asshole, you're not thinking, you know what, you're right. You're thinking, you're lying. You're just saying that to get me to be quiet because you're a fucking selfish asshole like we all are, and you're saying some bullshit about, oh, we're gonna all get good grades on the thing. It's disingenuous. It's a lie. Oh, the cage babies. You built the cages. And it's true. Because the conditions of American politics assume that there will be climate catastrophe, there will be pandemic that will never be stopped, there will be continued economic bottoming out, there will be people killing themselves in greater and greater number, indirectly, there will be just social collapse. And the replacement with just the mere attenuated nerve endings of pure stimulus response. The people who can bury themselves in the internet to find some reason to keep moving forward. Imagine frontier they can walk through into the digital realm while everybody else just dissolves.
This is the real doomer shit.
And we are seeing this with the vote. Race is being, we're seeing the poll. Now, the biggest weight, the most dramatic one you can see it is Latinos. And of course people say, those Latino men, it's the machismo. It's like, well, that's kind of true in a vague sense, in the sense that the Don't Be an Asshole party is feminine, culturally marked. And
that's what I was saying earlier, that the Democrats are the mommy party and the Republicans are the daddy party. This is what I mean, feminine culturally marked. And it's also true in the absolute sense. Women are more likely to be Democrats than men are. Now, there are a large percentage of the Democratic Party are men. But what type of man is a Democrat? You are most likely a college-educated person. The non-college educated men, white men, are not Democrats. That's only maybe 30%. 30% or so of non-college educated white men are Democrats in the nation. Now, if you go north, it's more likely that you'll be a Democrat and be non-college educated, because there's still kind of a union culture that's slowly rotting, slowly moldering up in the Northeast and maybe California, right? But other than that, if you're not college educated and you're a man, you're a Republican. And it's becoming more and more true, even of people of color. And this is the change. This is the true victory of the right, is black men and Hispanic men are going to consider themselves Republican. And the Democratic Party just cannot win like that. The Democratic Party cannot win if black men and Latino men are calling themselves Republicans. They just don't have the numbers.
Don't be a pussy party is masculine. And so if it's just down to boys versus girls, if politics is just boys versus girls, and you think you're a guy, well, why wouldn't you pick guys? Unless you wanted the girls to like you. And you only learn that when you're sitting around with the other kids at the fucking tea party in college.
Matt is so right. It's so funny
if it's
how
the Dudes
right
Rock
Matt
party is. And the Hens party or whatever. I don't know. A woman should name the equivalent of the Dudes Rock party, because obviously this is not Dudes Rock. It's awful. It's toxic masculinity. It is. It's awful. It's bad. Its political expression is noxious and awful. The policies it proposes are terrible. But they're the same policies and the same outcomes that the Democrats do. They're just coded differently.
That's the really important part, is the policies are the same. You vote for the Democrats, you get a conservative Supreme Court majority. You vote for the Republicans, you get a conservative Supreme Court majority. There is no difference in the outcomes. You vote for Trump, you get Title 42. You vote for Biden, you get Title 42. You vote for Trump, you get increased military spending. You vote for Biden, you get increased military spending. They're the same party. You vote for Trump, you get tax cuts for the rich. You vote for Biden, you get tax cuts for the rich. It's the same shit. But Trump tells you to be proud of it. Biden says, keep your voice down. It's a fucking loser party.
And so, because Latinos do not experience race in America the way that black people do. Yeah. Because no one in America experiences race the way black people do, and the idea that, like, because we invented racism, you know, through capitalism, but like branding black labor to keep it, you know, trackable in absence of greater technological ability. Like, if they had chips in people's wrist that could like blow up if you weren't working enough, they wouldn't need a color system. It was that I'm taking people to the new world. I don't want them to first run away and start a farm with the Indians. It's just a hell of a lot harder to do if you have a completely alien culture and fucking a notifiable color difference that marks you as out of place, if not accounted for. And
That's
so,
right.
But then we took all like the people outside of this, mostly liberal whites, basically created these theories where like they listened to minorities, they listened to lived experiences of being a minority, but then they took them and applied them to the only rubric they knew, which is white and black. And Latinos do not experience race the way that black people do. And the evidence for it is this fucking election. Like, think of the way that that Trump guarantees that he will never get, no Republican will get more than 10% of the black vote, right? It doesn't happen. It's not going to happen. He might have done a little better with some black men, but that's the ceiling for, and if you think about it, when you think of the way every other demographic breaks down in this country, that's an insane statistic. Especially when you consider how many black people are in this country. That's a crazy amount of real estate that they are ceding and cannot even hope to get off the block. Meanwhile, Latinos are fluid. And even though he went hard anti-Hispanic, he went hard anti-immigrant, hardcore anti-immigrant, and that said, oh God, what are they going to do? He actually didn't do that bad. He did a little better than Romney, I believe, with Latinos. And then what's this? He's done even better again.
And this is absolutely true. By the way, I'm not as sanguine as Matt is about the black vote. I think that the Republicans have a growth opportunity among black men. I think that the more the Republicans make the conversation about race, where liberals are like, oh, black people are permanently disadvantaged, a lot of black people are going to say, no, I'm fucking not. I can succeed. And believe it or not, that's going to work.
Because all that stuff about the kids in cages, it's not experienced as like that level, at the visceral thing. Like the BLM stuff, like every police killing, I think, it reverberates through the black community in like a shockwave. But like kids in cages, if you're an American Latino, there are so many different things that can mean, from being a fucking Gusano in South Florida to like a fourth generation Mexican,
or in Nebraska,
American in Texas or something. You're an American, and those kids in cages aren't, and that's deeper. They're not your fucking kids. They're from fucking. They're not. It's not. They're like. I'm not. They're from fucking El Salvador. I don't know those fucking people. They're not my kin, the way that like George Floyd's death is felt as like a collective attack by black people. And so that means they're not going to respond to race the way black people did, which means they're not going to be the malleable mass that the college-educated elite that make up the Democratic Party can mold to their liking. Oh no, what's this? It's packing away. Oh no, our stuff's only working on the college-educated ones. Oh shit, what about the rest of them? Oh no, oh what's this? The society's breaking down along class lines. Oh look, they're going away. And what is that? They went to the Dudes Rock Party. They fucking exiled themselves to the Dudes Rock Party because that's what they care about. They care about dudes rocking. They don't care about some Mexicans in Mexico hate Central American immigrants. What the fuck do you think American Mexicans? People who are American, remember, none of these people are going to get an ICE raid. By definition, they're voting in an American election. And so they see this as like, look, I'm in America. I have a barbecue. I don't want some fucking guy who speaks like what, some Central American Indian language coming up to me and taking my fucking grill or like asking me to wash my windows. Fuck that. We got to have a barrier. How do we have a barrier? We have a fucking wall. We're gonna have wall. We're gonna have cages. There's gonna be kids. Oh God, don't be a fucking pussy about it.
That's where we are, man. That's where we are. It's also because of a Latin American religion that is deeply conservative Catholic. I mean, there is that certainly that strain, right?
For example, getting drugs out of kids' hands and helping those kids have a more stable future. If in some places the recreational use of cannabis goes up in the general population, it usually only does a little. Harmful use goes down. On the other side of things, the war on drugs has made drugs themselves worse. Potency goes up when you're pushing drugs underground and into the hands of smugglers who are dealing with limited space and weight requirements, increasing the risk of overdose. And the constant competition for cheaper drugs means the illicit sector ends up cutting quote-unquote clean drugs with harmful additives, which for obvious reasons aren't usually disclosed to the person consuming them. Both of these trends can increase the chance of death or serious health problems with drug consumption, which is...
I think I feel it has to do with machismo in our culture and how it resonates with reactionary takes. In addition to a lot of American Mexicans can end up being very anti-immigrant as a way to appealing to Americans and promoting their Americanness. I saw this a lot with the Mexican-American Marines especially. Of course. Separating yourself from the recent immigrant is a way of making yourself belong. If you are anxious about how you're perceived as an American, well, then you would wrap yourself in an American flag as protection, both mental and physical. Duh.
You know, bad. It's not always perfect, and in all fairness, some of the positive data we have is more correlational than certified causal. But drug legalization and depenalization is undeniably better than what we're currently doing by a mile. We elite YouTubers and guardians of all knowledge make these videos because in just a couple minutes, you can get a very clear idea of the benefits of legalization and decriminalization and why we should absolutely do it. Wanting a more free society, reducing the impact of drugs, and resolving the wrongs of a useless war are all good things, and make these videos and the policies they promote really attractive. Fact checkers and people who like specific percentages, sources are in the description. But I'm hoping this video can be a little different and go a bit deeper. Not just because I know that you already agree, you little drug legalizing rascal you, but because this is a super interesting political topic with a
fucking B-roll, man. The fucking
video
B-roll,
can be a little
man.
different and go a bit deeper. Not just because I know that you already
Look at this fucking B-roll. Hey, he's a subscription member of the B-roll.
agree, you little drug legalizing rascal you, but because this is a super interesting political topic with a lot of depth to it. A lot more than the strict policy framework of moving something from one list to another. Let's take ourselves a little less seriously this week, relax, and just talk about the intersection of drugs and politics for a little while, covering some interesting aspects of the topic without trying too hard to make an ironclad, one-dimensional argument. This video is going to be less argumentative and more exploratory than my videos usually are.
I want to be
so
B-roll
get
guy.
ready.
Can you imagine how easy my life would be if I put out a fucking 15-minute video with me talking over B-roll once a week? You know how awesome that kind of life would be and have 1 million fucking subscribers? He's rolling in it.
For that. Because the reality of human history is that we went from a world where drugs were just another part of life to a world where drugs became deeply embedded in our global power structures, often for the worse. How did we get there? Let's go way back. Drugs, meaning substances we introduce to our bodies for non-nutritional purposes, have existed all around the world and pop up pretty much everywhere in pretty much every era, used in religious ceremonies, for medicinal purposes,
as opposed to working
and
25 hours a week and making 6 figures. James, wait, I'll have you know that I put in at least 40 hours a week. You know how hard of a businessman I am?
To the extent
Ninja number 0, thanks for the 9 months.
That these three things can even be clearly separated.
His voice is godly. Do you guys think the second thought guy's voice is better than mine? You can be honest. It's all right.
The various drugs we still know today, like cannabinoids, opiates, cocaine, nicotine, and caffeine, all have some record of being used by humans several thousand years ago in countless places around the world, wherever the plants that produced them grow. Thanks to a ton of work by all sorts of scientists, we've got a really impressive record of different cultural uses.
By the way, the Taliban just banned poppy cultivation for opium. Well, they did that before. Like, before we invaded Afghanistan, the Taliban had eradicated opium production.
For all sorts of drugs spanning thousands and thousands of years and miles, even a cursory general history of which can't possibly fit into a couple minutes of a YouTube video when you consider just how many drugs there are today, how many there have been in the past, and how widespread their uses became at various points in history. At the risk of sounding like a Vice reporter with a culturally appropriated tattoo, historically speaking, human existence is drug use. Today, that statement isn't necessarily controversial,
Good joke,
but
man.
at least a little unexpected, like still liking Hamilton. And the reason saying human lives are deeply tangled with drug
Still liking Hamilton? Wait. Did JT just admit he liked Hamilton at some point? You know what I'm proud to say, chat? Never seen it. I've never seen Hamilton. I've never, ever seen it. The moment I saw it, I thought, liberal! And I just screamed liberal. I never saw it.
use sounds weird, is that the human relationship with drugs has dramatically changed in the last 1,000 or so years. Predictably, colonialism and the industrialization of drug consumption are some of the biggest reasons for that change. Because today, highly industrialized countries like the US and the UK are countries where drug laws are some of the strictest in the world. In the US alone, somewhere between 250,000 and 500,000 people are in jail for drug offenses, which, while I'm here, research shows that higher rates of imprisonment don't reduce drug consumption. Anyway, despite their very policey current policies...
I literally know some people who recently gotten their green card citizenship and consider anyone else coming in here to be bad and should be turned away. It makes no sense because they're usually coming from the same material conditions. Since they're now on this plot of dirt instead of the other, they're deeply national on this side of the white band. It's really a wild American conundrum. That's because the Democrats don't do anything to reach out to recent immigrants. They are a fucking loser party.
The history of these two countries is one of tremendous
I have not peaked the mic! Oh wait, and then I just peaked it. What the fuck? That shouldn't peak like that. What the fuck just happened? That actually did kind of peak. What the fuck happened? What's going on here? Well, that's weird. Really weird. Okay.
Promotion everywhere around the globe. Believe the posters in your college dorm and those t-shirts at tourist shops. Uncle Sam really did want people to get blasted on the reg. The story of the British Empire and the Chinese Opium Wars is the classic example here. For over 100 years, Britain sold opium to China.
They can't gerrymander the Senate. The Senate was already gerrymandered. They already gerrymandered the Senate a long time ago. So they're just continuing to exist in that gerrymandered world. They don't need to do anything.
Tactically flooding their market illegally and eventually fighting 2 wars with the country to force open trade relations and expand the reach of Britain's power. In search of bigger markets, more access to goods to bring back to whatever the British equivalent of stateside is, and thanks to that classic British desire for colonial subordination, drugs at the hands of the empire proved to be an incredibly effective instrument of power. Opium was so good at helping Britain do a war that it went ahead and did it twice, getting China to concede by opening ports of trade all across its coast and ceding large amounts of territory like the still British not that long ago Hong Kong. But Britain isn't the only country.
My favorite thing about the Hong Kong situation is like so many liberals are like, Hong Kong has a democracy. And it's like Hong Kong was a British fucking occupied martial law territory until well into the 80s. And it's like, oh, yeah, but we gave them democracy 5 years before we turned it over. So how dare you question us?
That gets to have fun playing drug war games. During the Cold War, the US adopted the same stance all across the world.
Oh, there was a really cool video about South Korea I wanted to watch, chat. We should watch that.
In France and Italy, the CIA aided strikebreakers and the Italian mafia to try to suppress communist organizing, eventually bolstering these groups in their ability to dominate domestic and American heroin markets. In many different parts of Asia, opium profits were used to fund anti-communist and nationalist armies, and some of the product was kicked on over to them boys in green in that there Vietnam, so they could get a taste of that devilish smack. But these two examples are relatively minor footnotes in the history of drug-related interventionism by the US and the CIA.
Actually, I think it was 1 in 4 troops were using heroin during Vietnam. In theater.
The bulk of US work still remembered today is in Latin America. Let's set the stage for a second.
1999.
The US elects famed voice actor of the hit film The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse to be president one more time just to get it out of their system. Unluckily for him, Reagan's not allowed to go do every single thing he wants, like arm dictators in Iran and fund right-wing militias in Nicaragua. Luckily for him, though, he can use the sneaky political trick of doing it anyway, massively increasing the scale of drug trafficking in the process and destabilizing a whole continent. All the while, of course, being the voice behind the American hit The Just Say No campaign. Using arms sales in Iran, illegal at the time because of an embargo, by the way, Reagan funneled funds to anti-communist rebel networks in Nicaragua, which, surprise surprise, made their money through the drug trade. At the same time the US was promoting the growth of illicit drugs through Contra networks, it was simultaneously promoting the industrialization of its legal production in the pharmaceutical sector. US drug companies started gaining power in Latin America and laid their claim to parts of the drug cultivation and refining economy. The US delineated what it deemed to be justified uses for drug plants like coca, and then imposed its industrial sector to profit off this regulatory permit it had practically issued itself, setting up chains of neocolonial exploitation in the process. This double movement allowed even more US intervention. Back home, this was done by fear-mongering about the threat of drugs on our children, and the need for the US to stop the flow, quote, at the source, which really meant sending American troops, intelligence, and flexing the US's economic power at whatever countries the US didn't like. The illicit drug economy was brutally repressed, and the arbitrarily legal side of the drug economy was expanded. In its public messaging, the US made the connection between terror groups and the drug trade, leaving out the part where they were funding those same terror groups and trying to whitewash their image back home, while at the same time, the US used its economic and geopolitical power once more to start creating international drug policy, setting up institutions and treaties that would draw clear and arbitrary lines between legal and illegal drug production and consumption in ways that would conveniently allow it to punish its domestic population and that of foreign countries to the degree it saw fit. And that would allow its own industries to develop quickly, while other American countries lagged behind, cut off from the same markets. Here, too, control over drug production was used as a way to expand capitalist markets and subordinate foreign nations. But it doesn't end there. All over the world, introducing drug consumption was used tactically to both expand the reach of capitalist nations on the industrial side and institute capitalist modes of production on the societal side in places where those drugs didn't exist before, or at least not in quite the way the US presented them. Drugs, because of their capacity for addiction, were introduced, weaponized, and placed behind price barriers, meaning that if you want drugs now, you need to buy them, in order to create new labor forces willing to work for wages, both at the individual and the national scale. Drugs helped create wage labor in parts of the world, and when we talk about the history of capitalist expansion, that often gets brushed aside. Over time, the drugs that became associated with productivity, like tobacco and caffeine, escaped prohibitionary regimes, as did incredibly popular and profitable drugs like alcohol and medicinal drugs, fluctuating over time as new and more potent iterations of the same drug entered into circulation. For the drugs outside these categories, the use of narcotics for leisure became closely associated with sin, anti-sociability, and all sorts of other bad things. Even today, we have a hard time justifying drug legalization in the public sphere without resorting to medical arguments, touting the psychological benefits of psilocybin or the pain treatment virtues of marijuana. It can't simply be the case that some drugs, when properly handled, regulated, and used, can just be a fun thing. Part of the reason for that is that we have stigmatized some drug use incredibly harshly, appropriately in some cases, but undeniably excessively in others. And look, I'm not saying you should run out and go do drugs. If I'm being honest, they're not really my thing, And if you're young in particular, and I know a lot of my audience is, the harmful effects of drugs go double for you. A brain that is still changing as much as yours won't love the kinds of baggage drugs bring with them in ways that can affect you pretty severely over time. But we can still recognize how dramatic some of the discourse surrounding drug use has gotten. Back to the politics side of things. Look, we've made progress on drug policies. Even some conservatives are turning over a new leaf, so to speak, about harm reduction strategies and a health-first approach to drug use.
I mean, no, they aren't. No, they aren't. There's like 3 people. There's Republican politicians who are out of office who are working as lobbyists, but I mean, like, come on. Imagine if we didn't elect Joe Biden, we'd have legalized weed by now.
Which is really good. No conservative today is still seriously beating the drum of the war on drugs or stupidly thinks that harm reduction strategies are, I don't know, the worst of coddling culture combined with victim ideology.
What the fuck is JT talking about? Yeah, you ain't right, man. Anytime you try to set up any kind of like safe injection site or needle exchange program, conservatives come out of the woodwork to block it. This is totally wrong. This is wrong.
Combined with kind of a hatred of civilization.
This is the worst of coddling culture combined with victim ideology, combined with kind of a hatred of civilization.
Well, heck. Okay, so we're not quite there yet.
Okay, never mind. Sorry, chat. I should have trusted him.
Look, if you have to take anything from my long rambling about drugs and politics, let it be this. Drugs have a long, very interesting history.
He was sarcastic and I missed it totally.
In society. We are at a point today.
Mike, where's my rose? Take your fucking credit card out, Derek. Take your fucking credit card out, Derek.
Where we aren't going to be in either a drug-free society, nor a place where we can consume drugs with reckless abandon. We can use the scientific discoveries we've already made to enjoy some drugs responsibly, and should urge our governments to allow for greater scientific inquiry to both make sure that's actually the case, and learn more about the drugs we still consider taboo. We can do all this by recognizing that the role of drugs...
Can I just say one thing? Listen. Our place is... It's for advertising your community, right? And I should do that kind of stuff. But I just don't care. I don't care about Reddit. I don't. And I find that shit boring. It's just me. I don't blame anybody else for doing it. Do what you do. Do what makes you happy, you know. Me personally, I find it boring as shit. Okay, you're trying to change some pixels. This is fun for like 5 minutes. But I just can't do it, man. I feel like this community is too boomer to get involved in that. I don't know. Reddit's pretty boomer, man. Phantom Freak, thank you for the 5 tier 1s. And Sonia, thanks for the prime.
In our history is complex, ever-changing, and is often a corollary of who has power in a society. Today, with so many people imprisoned on drug charges, it's clear where that power lies. If we want to get to a society where we all share power equally, a democracy, if you will, we are going to need to change our relationship with drugs, too.
It's so boring, but it pumps view count. Wait, it pumps view count? Wait, more people want to watch r/place? It pumps your view count? Really? XQC got 150k viewers. I mean, that's XQC. 200k? 70? Wait, what? I'm still not doing it.
It's going to need to be one of deeper understanding, greater freedom, and greater compassion, not one of constantly escalating violence, punishment, and repression. Nobody wants someone's life to be ruined by drug use. Making sure that drug use doesn't get you thrown in jail, stop you from landing a job, and that you can get access to proper treatment if you want to is...
Okay, there's a poll, chat. You can vote.
The way to do that. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help me